Okay, so in this second session, we are going to go into talking about Greece. This is one of the places that we'll be visiting, and I think it is important for us to know a little bit of its historical background. And when you come to it, you can at least appreciate on the ground. What is this you are touching? What is this you are looking at? What is this the guide is talking about? Okay, so like all the others, what we talked about just now about Constantinople, we will talk first about the name and everything first, okay? All right. Okay, Greece, huh? Okay, this is Greece. Its name is called, in Greek, is called Hellas, okay? Hellas basically is the name that the Greek call themselves, huh? Okay, and that's the name where we get the word Hellenistic. Okay, so sometimes you heard the word Hellenistic or Hellenic, you know, those referring to Greek, again, kind of thing, because the word for Greece in Greece is basically Hellas. Okay, and the English name basically Greece is actually taken from a Latin transliteration of the name Greecus. Okay, from the name Graeci, which is basically the first ancient Greek tribes that settled in the part in southern Italy. The Greeks that settled in southern Italy, okay, the Italians call them, okay, this name, so it became the English name. Okay, Greece, of course, the capital which you will be going to will be Athens. Okay, so this is Greece, by the way, in where it is situated. The part in dark green is Greece. The part is in light green in this modern map here is the rest of the European Union. Okay, all these countries in green are the European Union. Okay, you realize that technically Turkey is not part of this European Union. Okay, the rest of these in gray are part of Europe. The lighter gray are even further than Europe. Okay, are not in Europe. So you know where is Europe, where is the European Union, and where is Greece. Okay, now next slide. Okay, this is Athens. Okay, Athens is the capital of Greece. Okay, and Athens has been a very strong. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing myself. Athens has been a very strong city-state. Remember just now I told you, originally all the Greek communities and colonies were not united. Every one of them was city-states. Athens was one of the stronger city-states that stood up against the Persian invasion, okay, 300-400 years before Christ, okay, or 400-500 years before Christ rather, okay. The second biggest city in Greece today is Thessaloniki, okay, which is Thessalonica, okay, the biblical city that which we have these first two books, two letters of the Thessalonians. This is the second biggest city after Athens in Greece. Okay, noticeable, the highest point geographically for Greece, okay, is Mount Olympus, which you see here in the background. Okay, it's the highest mountain in Greece. It's also the mythical abode of the gods of Olympus, where Zeus reside. Okay, so that's where all the folklore come about. You imagine, you're a Greek farmer, and you day in day out you look at that background, that majestic mountain, and you must probably imagine this probably where the gods would have been the best place that the gods probably is staying. Okay, so that's how the folklore probably come about. Okay, religion for Greece. Okay, today, yeah, 93% Christianity. Okay, but please don't be confused. This Greek Christianity is very different from the Christianity that you and I are familiar with. The evangelical or so-called even Western kind of evangelical faith. Okay, this is the Greek Eastern faith. Okay, so remember just now I told you the great divide, the great schism between the Western Church and the Eastern Church. The truth of the matter is, Martin Luther and his Reformation was a reformation of the Roman Catholic Church, a reformation of the Western Church. You and I, from the Reformation, historically, we are and have our roots in the Western Church. So this Western Church is actually very unfamiliar to all of us. Okay, to some extent, sometimes you see some of their worship patterns and formats is very different from us. But when we say Greece is 93% Christianity, actually 90% of them are Greek Orthodoxy. Okay, and the Church of Greece is recognized by the Greek constitution. Okay, one of the countries, few countries, in fact, sorry, it is the only country in the world where Eastern Orthodoxy is recognized as the state religion. State religion, by the way. Okay, so in a sense, this is the only Christian Orthodox country in the world. Okay, 3% of who they call Christians are other Christians, including the Roman Catholics, including evangelicals like you and I. 4% are atheists, 2% Islam, and 1% other kind of religions. Okay. Yeah, the Greece actually for a long time, okay, in history, were under the rule of the Ottoman Turks. Okay, that means they were part of the control by the Turkish government. Okay, so the Turks actually controlled them. Okay, until 1821. Okay, when the Greeks become richer. How the Greeks become richer is actually through sea trade. They are very rich sea merchants later on. Okay, and so from these sea merchants, they basically, because of their seafaring, they have exposure to other revivals in other countries, how nationalistic they can be, and they become very nationalistic also. They realize that they need to have their own Greek country, and so they begin to fight their the one who control them, the Turks. Okay, and by 1830, they were recognized as a country themselves. Okay, so this is a picture. You can see the Greek flag fighting against the Turkish flag in this comic picture over here. Okay, Greece is the home actually to Western civilization. Today, when we talk about Greece, the Greeks, basically everything that is Western civilization, I think we can trace it to the Greeks. So you can say that this is the cradle of Western civilization. Okay, it is the home to the first advanced civilization in the continent of Europe. Okay, it is the cradle of democracy. Okay, 500 years before Christ, the Athenians were already talking about democracy. Way even before the Romans talk about democracy 500 years after them. Okay, it is a place, the birthplace of Western philosophy. Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, and so forth, all these famous philosophers are all from this place called Greece, hundreds of years before Jesus Christ's birth. Okay, this is a place of Western literature. Homer's Iliad, okay, and Odyssey were written probably, okay, 600 to 800 years before the time of Christ. In the place of historiography, Herodotus was the one who recorded the history, and that's why we know so much about Greek history, because there was proper record of history in this place. Okay, there are many civilizations in this world that were older than the Greeks, but we don't know their history as well because they don't have good historiography. Okay, political science, how the country was being ruled and organized. This is one of the most organized place. Okay, of course, science and maths. Okay, we learn a lot of things. Pythagoras theorem, Archimedes, what they call screw and things like that. All come from this place. Okay, theater, and of course, the Olympic Games was birthed in this place. Okay, this is the Olympic Games. Prior to the Olympic Games, historians like to call that the Dark Ages, because that is the confusing part where the Greeks were very disorganized. It's only after the Olympic Games were instituted about that time that we begin to see that the Greeks coming out of their dark ages. Okay, so the Olympic Games is actually a very good indication that the empire has actually gone to a second stage of advancement in civilization. Okay, 776, according to the historical record that we found, it's the first time, the earliest time that we know they have Olympic Games. The first Olympic Games only have one competition, the 200-meter sprint. Only one competition, and the winner only just win one laurel. Okay, yeah. So that's all that they win. No medals, okay, but just one crown. That crown, which is basically the leafy crown. Okay. Okay, and of course, this is Homer's two famous books, the Iliad and the Odyssey, which the story that talk about here, okay, we are not sure. Some of these are really folk tales, some of these are history mixed together. So we are unsure of this, okay? Now, as I mentioned, Greece originally, when they started, they were not organized as an empire or as a country. The Greeks were basically people who speak the same language, we share the same culture, but they populate many of the port cities around the Mediterranean. So you can see that they were all over the place. Just now, I just told you that the word Greek that we have today is actually because the Italians called the Greeks who are staying in southern Italy as call them Greeks. Okay, so that's how we got it, because it's not even from mainland Greece over here. Okay, so they were city-states, not that they were disunited, but they were very independent city-states. Okay, including Byzantium was also actually a Greek colony. Okay, and Ephesus, and at that point of time in early days, Miletus was actually one of the biggest places. But of course, two of the biggest city-state that you want to recognize is this called Athens, okay, which would have stood up against the Persians who were occupying the whole of Asia Minor here, and Sparta. Okay, in fact, Sparta is militarily many times stronger than Athens. Okay, but the Athens become more popular later, you know, through one particular event. Okay, this is the Parthenon on the Acropolis, or the city on the hill, Acropolis, okay, in Athens, which is now today the icon of classical Greece. Okay, so from Greece, after that Dark Ages, we call it the classical Greece. That is the golden age of Greek culture, where we have many things that we learn from them. Okay, now the Persian War is one of the defining moments. Okay, Persia before that, under the King Darius, which we know in the Bible, actually has his empire during the time of Daniel extended all the way to the west. And one of the places that he wanted to conquer was across the Bosporus Straits into Europe. And therefore he came into conflict with all these Greek city-states. So there were many wars, okay, that were fought. And remember, just now I told you the Golden Horn in Constantinople, or in that point of time, they still not called Constantinople, they call it Byzantium, okay, was one of the places that withstand the Persian invasion. Okay, now, actually, while they were conquering the place, Athens was one of the forces that fought against the Persian. Okay, and actually Athens went and helped some of the Greek colonies in Asia Minor, okay, and actually incurred the wrath of King Darius. King Darius formed his navy and came to Athens and wanted to attack Athens. Before he reached Athens, he reached this place called Marathon, okay, and he has his big forces of soldiers from the ship, okay, disembark, okay. And the Athenians were very clever. The Athenians actually called for reinforcement from Sparta. But the Spartans at that point of time were having some religious ceremony. Okay, and they told the Athenians, let us finish our religious ceremony, then we come and reinforce you. But no, before even they could come, the Spartans could join the action. The Persians were already on the beach. Okay, so the Athenians has no choice but to fight the Persians. But the Athenians were very clever. Okay, they devised a military strategy. You can see that they confine the Persians landing onto a marshland between rivers. So the Persians were confined in their frontage. And then the Greeks basically divide themselves into three forces: two strong left and right flank, and one middle flank that purposely absorb the main punishment from the Persians. So when the Persians attack, they basically withdraw, and the center force withdraw and go back. And whereas the two flanks came in and attacked them. And so the Persians lost a dramatic battle, even though their army was 3 to 4 times the size of the Greek army. Okay, that powerful battle was a defining moment to help the Athenians know for the first time in 492 BC that they could attack and they could win the Persian. Before that, they could only stop the Persian. This is the first time. Psychologically, they know they can win the Persian. And this is the first time they know psychologically they can win the Persian even without the help of the Spartans, that the Athenians are strong. And that's why Athens become a very key city-state among an influential state among the Greeks after that. And of course, famously, this Battle of Marathon, you will hear the story that this is where the 442 kilometers marathon come about. Okay, that because the bringer of the news of this person actually bring the good news of the victory to Athens. Of course, that is only a legend. We do not know. I don't think so that is true. Okay, it's more true, though that is true, that there are runners always bringing the news. Okay, but the fact is that why this possible story is not true is because the Athenian army over here, after winning the Persians, they cannot send a marathon runner to go and tell the good news. In fact, the whole army had to quickly run back and probably outrun the marathon runner to go and protect Athens, because they know that after this defeat, the Persians are going to come and attack the city directly. Okay, so the story therefore is probably not true per se. Okay, but subsequently after that, the Greeks begin to unite, not by the Greeks in the south per se, in Athens or in Sparta, okay, but in Macedon. Macedon, there is this king called Philip, okay, who begin to unite all the Greeks slowly together, as you can see, okay, and they call themselves the League of Corinth. Corinth is another major city over here that you'll be visiting, okay, and this is where he called them the Hellenistic or the Hellenic schools, okay, pertaining to the Greeks, okay, the league, the Hellenistic League or the Greek League, a confederation of Greek states created by Philip II in 338 to 37 BC. Okay. However, Philip was murdered, okay, but his young son, okay, Alexander, actually took over from him. Alexander was such a great military strategist that he was called Alexander the Great, because he conquered probably the greatest empire known in the West. Okay, Alexander began to conquer, and this is the route. You can see the arrow. He began to fight firstly against the Persians, and after pushing out the Persian from Asia Minor, he went on to conquer the Palestine, which is the biblical land, conquered the Egyptian Empire, another big empire at that point of time, and then conquered on the Mesopotamian Empire, and then go on until the Indus River in India and the Kashmir Mountains in Central Asia. Okay, this was the size of his empire. We do not know what will happen further on, but actually Alexander died at a young age, just about 3 over years after all these conquests. Okay, and because he died so suddenly, his conquest basically stopped. Basically, you also find that you cannot keep on going one. When you play Risk, also you know you cannot keep on going. Okay, you'll be depleted of your military forces. Okay, so he has to consolidate at a certain point of time. So because he died, okay, his empire was divided among his generals. Okay, key among his generals are actually 3 of them that we want to know. Okay, Ptolemy, which is taken over Egypt part. Okay, Antigonus, which take over Asia Minor and Syria and Seleucus. Okay, which basically these three begin to fight among themselves. This is also the history of the Bible before the time of Christ. Okay, Antiochus Epiphanes, okay, basically came to Jerusalem and basically desecrate the temple in Jerusalem at that point of time. Okay, and that's why through this, although the empire become disintegrated, but what happened after that was that this became an opportunity where Greek culture had a great influence throughout the world. Okay, Greek language was spoken, Greek culture was practiced. In fact, when the Romans come after the Greeks, the Romans also were admirers of the Greek culture. They adopt everything Greek. Okay, they did not introduce a Roman culture when the Roman Empire came on to take over the Greek Empire. They took on and just continue to use the Greek culture. Okay, and so this was the Byzantium Eastern Roman Empire. As I said, it's mainly Greece and mainly Asia Minor, and you can find that its influence continue on. Even in this point of time, it was Greek culture all the way. Greek was the main language used, okay, for correspondence. Even the Bible, of course, was written mainly in Greek. Yeah, as you can see, this is a Greek New Testament, not written in Latin, not written in any other language, but written in Greek. Okay, you can see how Greek culture influenced the whole world. You can see that this was God's timing, okay, to use the effective language to transmit His word, okay, and to use the effective power to consolidate the whole world for the spread of the gospel, okay. But unfortunately, when the Romans came on, although they have the Roman peace that we talked about the last time, Pax Romana, okay, but very often they were actually entertaining for a large part of the second half of the empire, the intrusion of the barbarians from all at the borders from different parts. Rome was sacked, okay. Even Greece, Athens was sacked by the Vandals before, okay. On the 29th of May, 1453, it marks the end of the longest lasting medieval power and the beginning of centuries of Greek oppression. The Byzantine Empire collapsed, okay, with the Turks coming on board, okay. And that was the point of time where the Greeks, okay, lost their kingdom and do not know that they can be constituting a power until the 19th century. Then they woke up from that. Okay, Constantinople fell almost 2 months into grappling against the Ottoman siege. Okay, so Constantinople became the major city of the Turks, and they later on will rename it Istanbul. Although for the most part of the Turkish rule is still called Constantinople. Okay. Later on, the Greeks only fight for their independence, okay, from the Turks in 1827 with the help of the Russians, the French, and the British. Okay, in this battle of Navarino, a naval battle that they won against the Ottoman Turks, and that's how they got their independence. Okay, in 1821, okay, Greek independence. Okay, and here is just a quick review again. Since the Kingdom of the Greeks from 1832 independence until 1947, how initially independence was granted only to a small part, okay, and later on through different treaties that they make, they begin to take more and more part. Actually, a lot of Greeks were staying in this part here, Ionia, we call it, okay. So basically, this part is also Greek land. As I told you, Greeks, they were staying in all the coastal land, even in Constantinople. But because of the treaty that they have to make with their neighbors, they had to give some land to win some land. Okay, this land were given to the Turks later on. okay, Thrace, Eastern Thrace, and Ionia. And although these were basically Greek lands and Christian lands, okay, the people had to migrate and go back to Greece, and the Muslims from this part will have to migrate and few here. A little bit like what happened in Pakistan and India, okay, later on. Okay. So this end up what we call the Greek-Turkish people exchange, okay. So Christians and the Greeks migrated out of Asia Minor to Greece, and the Muslims, okay, migrated out of Greece into Turkey. Okay. So Greek company today continue to be very strong in their maritime trade. Okay, this is the Greek maritime trade. They control 16.2% of the world's total merchant fleet today, making them the largest ship owner in the world today. Okay, so they are ranked in the top 5 for all kinds of ships, including first for tankers and bulk carriers. Okay, so they remain this maritime power. Okay, as I said, they were colonizers in the ports. Okay, 50 countries with the largest Greek diaspora. Greeks diaspora went out throughout the world. You see, especially in the Western world, and even in Saudi Arabia, in Egypt, and in India and South Africa, there are lots of Greeks in those places. Okay. And today, if you go to Greece, and you go to Istanbul, and you go to Turkey, you see the souvenir shop, a lot of these things. So when I first went to Turkey, I saw this, I nearly buy them, but please do not buy them, okay? Because this is what they call the evil eye, okay? Or the Matiasma or Mati, okay? Some Greeks, especially in the villages today, believe that someone can catch the evil eye or the Matiasma from somebody who is jealous of you. And that person who is jealous of you may say a kind compliment to you, yeah, you are so pretty, okay? Or he may be envious actually of you. So those kind of words, they say, is a spell, okay? That it's an evil eye. The person has an evil eye upon you, okay? And it can hurt you physically or psychologically, okay? So to avoid that, they buy this spell, they wear this charm called this evil eye to ward off. Okay, blue is a color to ward off evil. Okay, but in fact, they say a person with blue eye can cast this kind of spell also. So just don't go and get involved into this. So this is Greek culture also, one of the Greek culture that remain behind. Okay, any questions on this session before I take a break again, and then we can go on to our last session.
Pastor Ma, what's the cause of the war, the Ottoman? I mean, other than because I mean in Turkey because of the work that I mean the bad things that Crusaders done. But what about the other country like Greece and all that?
Okay, there are many wars that fought around there. Okay, so the Crusaders wars were only one of them. And then later on, when I talk about Turkey, I will be able to tell you about the Ottoman and the Seljuks, how the Turks came into the land, and how there were a lot of wars also. But of course, you know, all these are very racial. Okay, so and therefore there were a lot of genocide happening. Okay, one race trying to obliterate another race, that kind of thing, including right to the modern days. When the Turkish modern republic was being set up, a lot of Armenian Christians, okay, in Turkey were actually killed in genocide also. So there were a lot of this kind of racial war in this small part of the world, a lot of conflict.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions or anybody? Okay. I'm not sure about my time right now. 11, I take a break, 11:30. Okay, yes. Okay, let's take a break again. Okay, then we come back, take 10 minutes break again. We come back for our last session. Okay, thank you.